one and all. Today I have my TBR for June. I am so excited for summer reading. I don't know what it is, but the idea of like sitting outside in my backyard with like a white wine spritzer, my feet are up, I am ready for summer reading. So I've got a huge stack of books here. Of course, I won't get to all of them. I also have books that haven't arrived yet because I have 2 books that I want to read that are releasing in June. So lots and lots of new-ish releases. But before we get to those, I want to share with you the books that I am currently reading that are kind of carrying over from May, whatever. The first is The Last Housewife by Ashley Winstead. This is my first Ashley Winstead, and I am loving her writing. I'm listening to this on audio, and it's fantastic. I will say, the blurb on the back, a little, I don't know, it gives away a little too much. So I'm not going to read the blurb on the back to you guys, but this does follow a woman named Shay. She has, since college, she's really kept herself separate from her college friends who ended up being like her very best friends in the world. She's moved on, she's married to a very wealthy man, and she's at her house one day listening to a podcast which is hosted by one of her childhood friends, and he is speaking about a murder that occurred, and it hits close to home. This is the murder of Laurel, which is one of Shay's best friends ever from college. She lived with her. They were incredibly close until college ended. And she essentially goes back to this college town where Laurel had remained, essentially, and is trying to find out what happened to her. And she meets up with her true crime host friend. It is gripping. I am so invested in the story and what happened to Laurel. I need to know, and I'm really, really liking it. So let me know in the comments below. Have you read In My Dreams, I Held a Knife? Is that what it's called? I Hold a Knife. Have you read that? Is that as good as this? Because I'm just loving it. I think she has another one coming out in October, if I am not mistaken. I am also reading Gallows Hill by Darcy Coates. This is set on a vineyard. We follow a woman named Margot, who as a child did live with her parents, I believe, on the grounds of this vineyard. But when she was 8, her parents essentially abandoned her. I think they dropped her off at her grandmother's house and just left her and didn't speak with her. They have since died suddenly together, and Margot has been given the house, the vineyard, the property, as well as the business surrounding this vineyard, which is very lucrative. And so as someone who's been kind of struggling financially, she's like, well, you know what? I've suddenly got this amazing business. I might as well stay. And she does that even though creepy things are happening at the house when she arrives. There are like nooses being found on the property, and she's hearing sounds. It is definitely creepy. There have been a few days or a few nights where I have like left my little light on going to sleep, and Barry's come in like, why is the light on? And I'm like, I'm scared, because I have been scared a couple of times reading this. I am kind of like slowly working my way through. I don't know why. You know what? I do know why. It's Vanderpump Rules. That's why I have been completely obsessed with that show, and the just bizarre nature of everyone on it. Obsessed. And my reading is lacking because of that. Next is a new book that Penguin Random House Canada sent me, which I'm very excited about. It's The Whispers by Ashley Ojai. She wrote The Push. She is Canadian, actually was in the publishing industry herself for many years and has moved over to the other side of writing. I'm so excited about this. This takes place over 3 days, and we follow a group of women, I believe like suburban women. They have gotten together for a barbecue. Everything's going well until we suddenly hear fighting between a mother and a son. Just a few moments later, or a few minutes later, that boy, I don't know if he's a grown man or a boy, I think it sounds like he's a young boy, he falls from his bedside window in the middle of the night. And that mother is obviously racked with guilt and fear, and she is sitting by his bedside. We follow these three women kind of working out what happened during that time. I think they all have their own drama going on in their life. It sounds quite different from The Push. It sounds like there's a little bit of Leanne Moriarty vibes to this story. It might not have those vibes while reading, but I'm so eager to pick this up. You will be seeing this in a haul coming up, but I'm not going to wait to pick it up. Next is The Last Word by Taylor Adams. This has had a lot of buzz, and it feels like everyone who's been reading this on Booktube has been really enjoying it, so I'm hopeful I will too. This follows a woman who is very much a recluse. She lives a bit isolated, I think like on a farm or a cottage or something like that. And she doesn't talk to anybody. I think she talks to her landlord every once in a while. She talks to her neighbor, but she really doesn't speak with a lot of people. One night she finishes reading a horror book and she's just infuriated. We've all been there where you finish a book and you're just like, what did I just read? That was a waste of time. So she goes on to the internet and, you know, just blurts out everything that's wrong with the book. She ends up having a tiff with the author himself. They have this argument and she leaves it at that, goes to bed, and then soon after, strange things start happening around her house, and she believes the author might have had something to do with it, which seems very far-fetched to me, but I mean, I don't know this lady yet, so we'll see. Yeah, it sounds so good, so I'd like to read that. I should probably mention the two books that are both being released June 20th. The first is the latest by Ruth Ware. It's called 0 Days, and this is meant to be a bit of a Mr. and Mrs. Smith type of story. We follow a couple. They are famous for their work picking locks, being able to get into difficult places. They basically do heists, I believe. They help with heists, I think. One day in the middle of one of those jobs, our main character's husband, who I don't remember his name at the moment, he dies suddenly. And everyone, including the police, believe that she has something to do with it. And yet, of course, she doesn't. She needs to find out who actually did kill him and also clear her name. It sounds like very, very different for Ruth Ware. This doesn't sound like a Ruth Ware story. If I read that synopsis, I wouldn't have paired her with that. That said, I'm kind of curious what she's going to do with that kind of story. So I definitely want to read that. I also want to read the latest Riley Sager. Now listen, it is hit or miss at this point. The last book that I loved by him was Lock Every Door, and that was a few years ago now. But the premise of his new book just sounds fantastic. It is about a woman who in the 20s is believed to have killed off a bunch of people in her family. Now, we follow her years later in the 80s. She is on her deathbed essentially. And we have a woman there interviewing her, essentially finding out about her life. And I think she just tells her everything. And I'm kind of curious about that storyline. I've always loved stories where it's an older person telling about their lives, especially when it might be a murderess. Sounds great. Moving on, we've got The Midford Affair by Marie Benedict. I've been wanting to read this for a while now. This takes place between the world wars and follows the Mitford sisters. They are very, very famous sisters, kind of socialites of the time. They did exist in the real life, in case you're not familiar with the Mitford sisters. One of them ended up being a very famous author. Like, I've never read any of her books, but I probably should pick one up. Another became very famous because of her relationship with the Nazis, like including Hitler. She was friends with the Nazis, and this follows these sisters kind of butting heads and viewing the world vastly differently. And I just think that sounds like a wonderful story and one that I want to read. The Lies I Tell by Julie Clark is a book that follows two women, one of which is a con artist. Her name can sometimes Meg, sometimes Maggie, sometimes Melody. She becomes the identity of whatever she needs to serve her purpose. And she, in the past, has run into a woman named Kat, and promptly ruined Kat's life. It's 10 years later. Kat has finally been able to identify this woman, and she wants to bring her down. And these two women, I think their lives explode into one another. Sounds really, really good. I've heard incredibly good things about this, so I'd like to read that. And last but not least is one that I've had on my shelves a few times, but you know what? This one seems perfect for this time of year. It is Runtime by Catherine Ryan Howard. This follows a group of people who are filming a horror movie. The lead actress has dipped out. For anyone watching Vanderpump Rules, I'm sorry that I said that, but also, sorry, not sorry. She's left the building. She's not involved in the project anymore, and we follow Adele, who was kind of her backup. She was a soap star. She's excited to get onto this movie because it might catapult her acting career. So she says yes. She's reading through the script. She's learning the lines. She is in the midst of this horror film being shot, and yet things from the script start to happen in real life. Sounds creepy and perfect for this time of year. Those are all of the books that I'm hoping to read in June. That's like quite a lot. I probably won't be able to do it all, but things can carry over. I'm really just in the mood for these kinds of books for the summer months. Let me know in the comments below what you're planning to read this June. If you've read any of the books that I mentioned, I'd love to know what you thought of them. And I will talk to you very soon. Bye, guys.